Got to come down, guys.
Dial it up, dial it up, dial it up. Go for it, all the way now.
Hello and welcome to the best of the action from leg 4 of the Whitbread Round the World race for the Volvo Trophy. Beginning with the eventful start from Sydney Harbour.
We'll also be looking at the physical impact of the race on the Whitbread crews. Battered, bloodied, but so far unbowed in their battle with the world's oceans.
And we catch up with probably the biggest name in sailing as Dennis Conner climbs aboard Toshiba for the first time in the race.
And of course we'll have the climax to the leg in Auckland, the backdrop once again to a thrilling contest as the fastest in the fleet charge for the line.
First though, we backtrack to find the crews celebrating the Christmas and New Year period in Sydney, host city for the next Olympics and an ideal playground for the Whitbread circus as it rolled into town. For the crews aboard all the boats, the stopover proved the best possible tonic for the forced leg racing to come, and a welcome diversion from the rigours of the one that preceded it. The third leg, the 2,250-mile course to Sydney, concluded with the tightest fleet finish in the history of the race, as no fewer than 5 boats sailed into Sydney Harbour inside 10 minutes.
Some 70 miles out and 6 hours from the finish, Paul Kayard and EF Language held the lead from Gunnar Krantz on Swedish Match. While it was Kayard who had his nose in front, Krantz and his crew were still well placed to put pressure on the American and desperate to repeat their winning performance in the second leg. Not that they were safe themselves from the rest of the fleet, as not far behind, Chessie Racing waited to capitalise on their slightest mistake. They too, meanwhile, were busy holding off the attentions of Merit Cup and Innovation Caverna, 2 boats waging their own battle in 4th and 5th. But Kayard and his crew were not to be denied. At 1:30 in the morning, after some 9.5 days of intense competition, EF Language crossed the finish line in front of the Sydney Opera House, just 5 minutes ahead of Swedish Match. For Kayard, it was a moment to savour.
I've been in a lot of tight races before, and to finish after 2,400 miles, everybody within, 20 miles, it's just an incredible race, and the guys did what we had to do to pull it off.
Next onto the podium, Swedish Match, just 52 seconds ahead of Chessie Racing, but still coveting first place.
We are happy, but you know, if you have it in your hand, you get the taste of blood for first place, you want to have it. So of course we are satisfied and really happy over our second place, but we really wanted that first place.
In third and making their first appearance on the podium, Chessie Racing, led by skipper George Collins, delighted on making his Whitbread debut.
Yeah, it was just unreal. I mean, a lot of pounding and a lot of hard sailing, a lot of boredom. And then the last couple of days where, particularly coming up the coastline, I mean, the coastline here is just fabulous. And to have the 9 boats together, plus the coastline, I mean, it was just, it was spectacular.
So, with 2 wins and a fourth after 3 legs, EF Language had established a 35-point lead over Innovation Caverna. Swedish Match climbing to 3rd to recover from their 8th in leg 1. Merit were in 4th, and behind them, after their 3rd spot coming into Sydney, Chessie Racing. Needing to get big results quickly were 2 of the pre-race favourites, Silk Cut and Toshiba, while starting to lose touch were EF Education and Brunel Sunergy.
There you think of the movement, and I was just literally flying, totally helpless. I felt like a little rag doll. I came into the mast a couple of times, did a 360, and I honestly thought I was going to get knocked unconscious.
You never even think about those things until they happen. You know it can happen,
but it's a sick feeling in your stomach because there isn't a thing you can do. You look up and you've got not only one of your mates up there, but you know he's in grave danger.
Afterwards is when you think, geez, that was a close one, I don't want to do that again, kind of thing.
Life on the Whitbread is no party. On every leg, someone will get hurt, and the medics on board have an enormous responsibility to ensure they can deal with every emergency.
You're a doctor, you've trained your whole life for this stuff. When you're a Whitbread medic, you've trained for 6 months and they've given you books this thick and all sorts of instructions, but the bottom line is, you know, you've got a friend who's really hurt.
If you bring
At every stopover, the medics for each of the boats are lectured on the latest treatments for injuries and illnesses most commonly experienced at sea. In Sydney, they're shown revolutionary new ways of stapling and gluing together open wounds.
The wound edges. I can bring the wound edges together, and then just squeezing this, I'm going to just paint the glue around the wound.
Dr. Rudy Rodriguez is the team doctor for Innovation Caverna and Chessie Racing, and the overall medical supervisor for the Whitbread Tour.
Some of the boats have over half of their crews having problems with the shoulder, with their elbows and their wrist, and it's just the repetitive motion of driving a boat for hours and days and weeks, you know, months at a time, using the same position over and over again.
Environmental injuries like hypothermia and frostbite are also par for the course, as are more traumatic incidents, and Leg 3 certainly had its fair share.
I'd been down in my bunk off watch, and I got shaken by the watch captain. He said, come up on deck. Ricky's got to go strop off a spinnaker. So I came up on deck. I threw my boots on, but had no foul weather gear or harness, and stepped on the deck to then bump Ricky up the mast. And we were just pounding into these waves, and it was a situation where if you're sailing upwind, that's the hardest condition to go up the mast. After he stropped the spinnaker off, we were easing him down, and he got to the third spreaders, and we just smashed into a massive wave.
I couldn't hold on, I got spun off the rig and went for a bit of a flyer around the rigging and ended up way back there, hanging onto the running back stays.
It's not funny anymore. It's frightening because you're watching him smash off the spreader, smash off the backstay, and then fly off. I mean, he was like a projectile, and you know he's getting hurt, and there's nothing you can do.
Rick, what I hope to do is...
Ricky's injuries are fairly typical for a Whitbread sailor.
What happened is, it wasn't really clear what went on with him because he was being whipped around the mast so far, and the thought is that he may have hit the jackstay in here. So as you can tell, he's got major bleeding all through here.
On EF Education, Anna Droog was also confined to her bunk after she broke her hand hours after the start from Fremantle.
We were grinding on, and suddenly the whole winch flew off the deck. It's like the basin of the winch broke, and it came off. And as it came off, my hand must have gone squished in between here.
Thankfully, all the injured from Leg 3 are slowly on the mend. And although it's not yet known whether Anna Droog or Ricky Depp will make Leg 4, there are some people who are just grateful to be alive.
Give me a hug.
Oh, so cute.
You gonna give Daddy a hug for his bad leg? Thank you.
As well as the injuries to the crews, there was also the Leg 3 damage to the boats to consider during the Sydney stopover, with 4 of them receiving urgent repairs to their mast and rigging.
I think the first 4 days out of Fremantle were very tough on the boats. There were large seas and a lot of wind. I know we saw 34 true, and the boats were driven very hard. So I think when you drive the boats that hard in a seaway, there was an enormous amount of strain on the rig, and some of the rigs had shown some trouble on the mast step area.
What we've done is reinforce those masts. The 2 damaged ones, we've replaced the bottom of it, and the other 2 we've reinforced. And now we've fixed that area, I don't think we'll see another problem in that area again, and maybe we might see a problem somewhere else, but hopefully now, you know, the boats have been sailing for a year, most of them, maybe a bit more, and like to think most of the problems have been sorted out by now.
But with only 3 of the 9 legs in the race completed, the boats have a lot more racing in front of them. And damaged boats win few races.
Less than 14 days in port, and the Whitbread fleet is readying itself to be back on the start line for leg 4. And the pressure is on. A critical leg for most, the short 1,270-mile dash from Sydney, across the Tasman Sea, around the north of New Zealand and down to Auckland, promises to be a dogfight. There'll be no sleep, no let-up and no easy rides. And the playing field will be challenging.
The race, of course, starts in Sydney Harbour, this particular leg, and that's a fairly tricky area to sail in because there's many sheltered parts of the harbour, and so they're very interested in starting conditions. We think there'll be southerly conditions at the start. It could be quite a blustery southerly, and there could also be some showers and storms around in the area. Probably 24 hours out into the race, we think conditions will get progressively lighter. Selecting the correct route will be very important in this case. While progress will be fairly slow, and the Tasman Sea can be quite a tricky area to sail in, but in this case, with light conditions, it seems to be a difficult leg, I suppose, to navigate.
One person who should know the way is Merit's Mike Quilter. First to make Auckland in 90 and 94, he knows a thing or two about the area.
The whole race is on an even par for danger. Yes, if you can get around North Cape first, you're in good shape, probably, because often the breeze will be different on the east coast of New Zealand to the west coast. There's quite often a weather change at North Cape, so if you can get around first, get into some breeze and get down the coast and get a little jump, which you can maybe hold to the finish. Once you get in close to Auckland, the wind can shut off. You know, the wind actually can't sort of push into Auckland. It's quite light in Auckland a lot of the time, so it can get quite tricky down there too.
Silk Cut Steve Hales has his own theories.
Yeah. Getting out of here is very simple. There'll be a very short start sequence, and you know, 20 minutes after the start, we're going to be heading out through the heads, and we'll be straight into the Tasman Sea. So we've got the leg across to Cape Reinga, which is on the northern tip of New Zealand, and that's the first part. And the second part is the 200-mile stretch down to Auckland itself. So they're the only real 2 legs in there, and there aren't too many passing lanes. You know, it's going to be a bit of a boat speed race down the coast to Auckland, because any time you line up next to a coastline, it obviously restricts anybody's opportunity to get past you. It's a lot easier to cover somebody when there's a bit of real estate on one side, basically.
One thing is certain, whoever makes it into Auckland first is guaranteed a sensational welcome. Race day in Darling Harbour, Sydney, and with just a few hours before the boats set off on their 4th leg journey, thoughts turn to the immediate demands of the first stage of the leg.
We're kind of expecting within the first 6 hours a fairly major wind shift, which will mean the first boat out will have the option of getting into that first. So if everyone's got the same information, then the order they start in could well be the order they get the first shift, and the fleet may spread out a bit.
Whilst expectations on the race leaders' EF language increase, the crew themselves prefer to keep tabs on their nearest rivals.
Obviously, a little bit of a concern is how well that Caverna has been picking the weather. You know, in each of the first 3 legs have done well, and I think they're probably the one to keep an eye on. They seem to know exactly what the wind's going to do.
Another boat to keep an eye on will be Toshiba, skippered for the first time this Whitbread by Dennis Connor.
All right. Morning.
Also a threat will be Merit's Grant Dalton, winner into Auckland in the last Whitbread, and again under pressure to cross the line first in front of hometown supporters and Kiwi rivals on other boats.
I guess probably the biggest New Zealand personality at home that's doing the race is Grant Dalton and Merit Cup. So obviously I think that it would be important for us, or important to me, to beat them in.
So a lot at stake for individuals and the fleet as a whole on this intensely competitive leg. And if history is anything to go by, it'll be the final stretch into Auckland that'll prove the most exciting.
Got a feeling we may all bunch up at North Cape, not unlike we got when we got sort of to the bottom of Australia there after Bass Strait, maybe, and have a nice 200-mile sprint down the coast of New Zealand.
You know, once again, it's probably max 6 days to get there, and you know, you can do Sydney Hobarts that take 4 days, and I know you don't sleep a lot in those races, so another 2 days it's no big deal. So, I mean, I guess it'll be, most of the guys will be on deck for the majority of the time, sleep when necessary, and just push the boat as physically as hard as it can go. So, yeah, you'll be pretty tired at the other end.
Feeling the physical demands of the leg more than most crews will be Christine Guillou aboard EF Education. With plenty of sail changes and little sleep, they'll be up against it. Last boat out of Darling Harbour en route for the start line, Paul Kayard and the crew of EF Language, confident they have what it takes in terms of man and machine to maintain their winning form. So, last out of the dock in Sydney, but will they be first to arrive in Auckland?
Well, light and fluky conditions out here in Sydney Harbour. Curtis Blewett there, top of the EF Language mast, Sydney Opera House behind. A lot of the crews at the top of the mast trying to get a better view of the wind shifts. It really is very, very light and fluky. Not typical Sydney Harbour weather at all. Innovation Caverna there. Sail furled at the front. That's the new Code Zero. Sail pioneered by these guys on EF Language. 1 minute 10 to the start. Dennis Connor there. Skipper of Toshiba for this leg. Mr. Yachting Dennis Connor, winner and loser of the America's Cup. Top of the line here on board the girls' boats, EF Education. Near them, Caverna. All the rest of the boat, the other side of the line. You can see them.
8, 7.
Looks to me like some boats are over this end.
4, 3, 2, 1, gun!
Well, that's the start of leg 4. Now, to me, and from this angle, it looks like some of this bunch are over. Andrew Cape there on Toshiba. Recall. Toshiba are over the line. Dennis Connor's over the line. Girls found that out. Great morale boost seeing Dennis Connor turn and go the wrong way back as EF Language, Paul Kayard, followed by Silk Cut in second position, lead the fleet off the start line. Great start there by EF Language. So who's this? This is Swedish Match. They've got a problem raising their Code Zero. Just beneath them, Merit Cup Grant Dalton. So EF Language leads, couple of miles out to the heads, and then it's open sea and 1,200 miles to Auckland. Bottom left of your picture there, that's Dennis Connor. He had to go back over the line, cross it again before he could turn and restart, but he's got more problems. Problems there with his Code Zero. These sails developed by so many of the crews in Cape Town, they really do seem to be causing problems out here today. So Dennis Connor announced he was getting on board only 2 days ago. As we're back with EF Education. They started the far end of the line. They look good there, but they're closer to the shore. Swedish Match, things getting sorted with their Code Zero. They're just behind Innovation Caverna. But looking forward, we've got EF Language winning, closing in, I think, frenzied activity on the British boat. Paul Kayard, the moustache skipper of EF Language, powering off the start line just like he did in Southampton. EF leading at the moment. Back here on Toshiba, they've got their Code Zero sorted. Time now for Dennis Connor and crew to put the power on and get some places back. Disastrous start there for Toshiba. Connor grimacing. Looks around, look back, you won't see much there. The whole fleet in front of Toshiba now. Laurie Smith, who's 7th position coming into Sydney, dropped him from 3rd overall to 6th overall. 1 point ahead of Toshiba. And 106 points behind EF Language. That's a huge difference. If Smith was to win this leg and EF Language to come last, well, Kayard would still have the edge over Smith. Somehow, though, I don't think that's going to happen. Paul Kayard and Team EF Language, great start again. Lots of spectator boats, wind getting softer now, still got the Code Zero up. 2 marks to round before the open sea and 1,200 miles to Auckland. Marks in the centre of the harbour there to keep the boats away from the rocks. One boat a bit closer to the side here, EF Education, looking quite good, but the wind coming from their right, so it could soften as they approach the harbour mouth. Great view down there on EF Language, approaching the first mark. Silk Cut about 100 metres behind. EF Language, Code Zero down. Genoa up, Harden's up into the breeze. Bit better breeze out here now. Josh Belsky, Magnus Olsen working hard, and behind them, Laurie Smith heads up into the breeze. Smith opting to have the Code Zero up and furled, so it's ready for action, but he's got extra windage. Interesting option, that. Caverna, they've decided to keep the Code Zero up. Water on the side there, that means the water ballast tanks are full, pumped up, ready to keep the boat as flat as possible. Crew will be on the side there when the breeze comes up as they head off to Auckland. Merritt Cup, Grant Dalton look like they're going to get the code 0 down, having a problem there. You've got 3, you've got 4 people pulling that down. You don't want to let go of that, it's got a mind of its own. 5 people. Grant Dalton got a problem. Dalton not well, he's had tonsillitis for 3 days. Last thing he wants is problems like this. Massive windage. Just in front there I can see Swedish Match, and now we're on board the girls having problems of their own there. Merritt Cup, Grant Dalton, they've dropped it, they've got windage, but they're in control, they're going to get it back on board. I can see someone coming past, that's Brunel Sunnergy, Roy Heiner, but they could be having problems. Amazing, these Code 0 sails. Almost everyone, I think, apart from Laurie Smith and Paul Cayard, have had problems with them. Quite surprised how the fleet split out already at this stage as we look down on Toshiba now. Back of the pack, Code 0 down. That's neat, no problems there. So Connor, lots of work to do. But he's smiling now, the grimace has gone. Good recovery. Paul Stanbridge, skipper Toshiba into 3rd place, then 6th into Sydney. Connor on board now. Toshiba desperate to get a podium position, the favourite at the beginning of the race. 2 of the other favourites, Merritt Cup, well, they're in 4th, and Laurie Smith in 6th. EF Language rounds the top mark. Language winning overall at the moment.
With the Whitbread fleet battling out of Sydney Harbour, 1,200 miles away in the pubs and living rooms of New Zealand, the boat's every move and sail change are being closely monitored. In a nation as full of sports fans as New Zealand, everyone, it seems, has something to say.
Well, you know, he's a big fat guy. He's done it again, over the line. You know, I mean, he's got to go right round again. That's a whole 360.
For the first time since 1981, New Zealand has no boat in the Whitbread it can call its own. But with over 1/3 of the crew members in the fleet being Kiwis, support for the race is as strong as ever.
We've had so many sailors involved with it since it first started, but it's just one of our great ocean racing events, I guess, every 4 years. We've done very well in it. The stop over here, I think, has been regarded by all the sailors as being the highlight of the whole trip.
Auckland, the city of sails, has more pleasure craft per capita than any other city in the world, and several of the Whitbread boats were constructed here in West Haven Harbour. With 1 in 3 Aucklanders involved in sailing, everyone you talk to knows about the race.
Every New Zealander will be following the race, mate. But at the moment, Connor's in the lead. Oh, we're not too happy about that. Mind you, we're looking towards the end. Dalton's not far behind. It's going to be excellent. We're all looking forward to Dalton coming in. Hopefully it'll be neck and neck. It's like anything like last time. Geez, Auckland's going to be packed. They'll be having great fun.
The last Whitbread arrival in Auckland saw nearly 100,000 people turn out for the finish.
Oh, it's just like a big washing machine. There are that many boats out there, and but it's just frenetic, and the atmosphere is just unbelievable. I imagine it would be something very similar to what happened last time they were here. I think the place will be just really jumping out there.
If this year's fleet sees a fraction of the crowd that came out to greet Grant Dalton last time round, they're assured of a memorable welcome.
Whitbread's part of us now, part of our heritage almost. It's great.
So, once again, it was EF Language and Paul Cayard who led the fleet away from the coast for the 3rd time in 4 legs. This time it was out of Sydney Harbour and into the Tasman Sea. Having used their masthead reaches to best effect, they set about consolidating their lead.
Well, we're out here on Lake 4, Sydney to Auckland, about 3 hours into it here. And we're sailing just about right on course to New Zealand now at about 10 knots. Smooth water, nice and warm. We're 2-3 miles ahead of the fleet here, and feels pretty good.
Just 1.5 miles behind EF Language was the British boat Silk Cut in 2nd place. But in less than 12 hours of racing, Laurie Smith and his crew were able to steal the lead despite only averaging 9 knots in the light and shifting breeze. As Silk Cut drew away from the rest of the fleet, the gap widened to 48 miles between the leaders and back markers. As the pack began to split, positions changed constantly. In the middle of the pack, sailing was particularly tight, with just yards separating Toshiba and Merit Cup on occasion.
Coming into the end of day one, and the wind's probably been a little bit more than we thought we'd get, so we've made pretty good progress. We're probably about 220 miles out of Sydney already, about 840 miles to North Cape. We've got a norwesterly at the moment. We've got a spinnaker up to Toshiba just out over my shoulder here at about 300 or 400 metres, and Swedish Match down there. There's quite a split north-south in the fleet as everybody's anticipating what the wind's going to do next, to stay on this high or get onto the new high.
In its position as the most northerly boat, Innovation Caverna failed to pick up the same northwesterly breeze as Merit and suffered as a result.
It's the second day on the fourth leg from Sydney to Auckland, and we're just sailing along here. We're reaching in 13-14 knots of wind, quite light, very variable conditions at the moment. We were just in third place a few hours ago. We dropped down to 5th or 6th or something now, and all the boats are very close.
No longer in the lead, the British boat's problem was now had a benefit from a new area of low pressure building from the southwest.
It'll be interesting to see the boats to the south, I think, are aiming for a little bit more of a lift inside us, which may work. And up here in the north, which we generally are, we're expecting that lift to be big enough to allow us to get in, and also a touch more wind speed.
Two of the boats already benefiting in the south were new leaders Toshiba and, not far behind them, Gunnar Krantz and Swedish Match.
At the moment we have a heading breeze. We were sailing with spinnakers this morning. Top speeds around 23, 24 knots. Average for many hours was 18.8 knots. And we have Toshiba straight up to weather of us, and then the other boats are basically straight behind us.
If Dennis Conner, making his first appearance at the helm in this year's Whitbread on board Toshiba, had any doubts about which direction to go, he certainly wasn't showing them. Having failed to get away from the start line cleanly in Sydney, he was even more determined to make his mark on the leg.
In the world of professional sailing, there's no name bigger than Dennis Conner. In this year's Whitbread, he's the man behind the Team Toshiba syndicate, who hired Kiwi Chris Dixon to skipper the boat. But with Dixon long gone, Conner makes a belated appearance in this year's race, looking to add round-the-world victory to an impressive roll of honour, which includes 4 America's Cup wins. He'll be desperate to make up for his last Whitbread campaign as skipper the ill-fated Winston, which suffered boom damage early in the race and never recovered.
I got into this because I love sailing, and I still love to compete, and any time that I have a chance to have a day off, I generally spend it racing my Etchells 22 or my PHRF boat in San Diego when I'm not competing on an international level. So what I still love to do is race sailboats, and for me a chance to get out here and sail on these dynamic boats in a very compelling race against some of the top sailors in the world it's a great opportunity. I'm looking forward to it.
Sailing highs.
For me, the opportunity to leave Sydney, where I'm a member of the CYC and have so many friends, and sail across the Tasman Sea to Auckland is a very exciting proposition. And I know from finishing the leg last time what the reception will be in Auckland. The City of Sails is spectacular. The welcome there will be just wonderful and very exciting. I just couldn't pass on this opportunity, so I'm treating myself to a very exciting leg.
Any surprises?
I expected the racing to be much closer, so when the first and second legs turned into a bit of a rout for the front runners, I was surprised. So that was my biggest surprise. And then my view of reality happened in the third race is what I expected for the first 2 legs, where heck, you had 17 minutes between the first and 7th boat. It could have been anybody's race, and that's what I expected in the first 2 legs.
Rules and regulations.
Without the point system, we wouldn't really have a race here. We could have basically there would only be two boats in the race. So I think whoever came up with the point systems was very creative, and it saved the race. So, and I'm sure it'll be here for a long time to come.
The Whitbread.
The event has the potential to be right up there at the top level of the sport along with the America's Cup. And I think the most exciting thing that we've seen happen for many years is the involvement of Volvo into the race. They're very professional. They know how to market a product, as we've seen in their involvement with tennis. And we're from a sailing standpoint, the sailors that I know are very, very excited about Volvo being involved with this race. We think that could be the most important thing to happen in sailing in our lifetime.
Best day sailing.
The challenges are there for all, whether you're racing the America's Cup or the Whitbread, and I enjoy all of it. I think that the most interesting for me is racing a one-design boat with a relatively controlled situation with 70 or 80 boats on the line. It's pretty exciting to me. So I think I still like the starboat racing, the Etchells 22 racing. It, for me, is the most fun, but I enjoy it all.
Being a good skipper.
I haven't been sailing on the boat, and I'm not as experienced as I would like to be, but I'm going to go out there and do my best and hope that I can come up with a few good ideas to help with the bottom line. So talk is cheap, and we'll have to wait and see. But most of all, I'm excited about the possibility of being out there on the starting line in Sydney Harbor and the finish line in Auckland, and the racing in between should be fantastic.
Just one wish.
Well, I'd like to wish for a safe trip for all the boats as they continue their voyage here, and be very nice for us to have a placing at the top of the leaderboard when we come back into Southampton.
By the middle of the leg, everything had changed. Swedish Match nosed ahead of Toshiba to lead the charge to Cape Reinga, while behind the northern boats suffered from a rogue wind shift and went careering all over the course. Worst hit was EF Language, which slipped to 8th. But taking a gutsy punt south, Kayard and his crew surged up to 5th and was catching up fast as the lead boats closed in on North New Zealand.
But we've made a nice comeback here, and we're in 5th, and we're 2 miles behind Chessie and 4 miles from Merritt, who's in 3rd. So we're looking forward to the 185-mile beat from North Cape down to Auckland. We feel pretty good about our boat speed on the wind, and the crew's psyched up to put in 110% all night long, and should be a nice little dogfight, precisely as predicted.
A dogfight duly ensued. Sailing into a hole, Swedish Match stopped dead, and 4 boats passed her. Among them, Merritt Cup.
We're around the top of New Zealand now, and boy, it's been dramatic. We're now gone from 3rd place to 1st place, and Swedish Match that was leading has gone back to 5th place. We've got Chessie racing about 500 metres just here. We've got Toshiba about 3/4 of a mile just up there, then EF, and you can just see Swedish Match on the horizon. There was a big hole under Cape Reinga at the top of New Zealand, and we've, with Chessie, come inside it, saw what had happened to, unfortunately, the Swedish Match, and come inside it. Now it's a real drag race. Let's hope down the coast now we've got the wheels to hold these guys off. We don't know, but it's all guys on deck now, probably 16, 17 hours to the finish, and there could be another wind change, more than likely between here and the finish, but it's all on.
It certainly was. With less than 12 hours to the finish, only 3 miles split the 1st from 4th. EF Language was closing in fast, and its tactical prowess was threatening. Behind, Swedish Match was back in the game, 8 miles off Merritt and taking a flyer offshore. Silk Cut in 6th had pulled in 30 miles on the leader and was now 24 miles off the front and coming up with more wind. Beating down the coast, the fleet was once more tightly bunched, the race having effectively been restarted. There was everything to play for, and everyone, but everyone, was looking over their shoulder.
As the fleet headed south from Cape Reinga, it encountered some of the most brutal conditions of the leg, beating into southwesterly winds gusting up to 50 knots. EF Language broke to the east in a last desperate attempt to overhaul the leaders, but to no avail. As the overall race leader headed back inland, there was an exhilarating sprint for the line developing, with less than a mile separating the first 3 boats.
Well, Grant Dalton and Merritt Cup, they'll settle for this. Last night they were in 3rd position. They were praying they could hang on to that podium place, but they were thinking they were going to be under pressure from behind. Well, now they're leading. They sailed past Swedish Match. Remember, the Swedish Match got stuck in the hole. They're in front now, the wind's building, but it's blowing hard and it's on the nose, and these aren't conditions that suit this boat. So really a lot of pressure there for the crew, all out on the rail. Behind, Dennis Connor and Toshiba. Remember, Connor on board this leg for the first time. He's in pursuit. He'll think he'll have the boat speed to get Dalton. Crew working hard there, just come out of attack, I guess. Soon they'll be on the rail. They won't have slept last night, these guys. They won't sleep today. They'll be finishing round about lunchtime today in Auckland. Seas really building. Punishing conditions, brutal weather. Gear failure a possibility in this. These Whitbread 60s, these racing greyhounds under huge pressure as the boat powers through the waves. Great shot these from the chopper looking down. Third place, Chesney Racing, Kostecki, Collins, two skippers. Big breeze, not far behind. I reckon they're about 5-10 minutes behind Toshiba, but they're in third place. Very, very close at the front. All tightened up last night when we got that skay in Auckland. 5 boats within 2.8 miles. The whole town started buzzing. We knew there was a race on. I was talking to Ross Field there, and he was the skipper, of course, of America's Challenge at the beginning of the race. He said this guy's going to win. Paul Kayard, EF Language. They were 8th. They've come up to 5th. They've got the boat speed. They're his favourite. Kayard determined to win. At the moment, remember, leading the race overall. Kayard at the helm. Great shot that tight in the bow of the EF Language, the boat that stormed off the Sydney start line in first position. Dropped back to 8th. Brave navigational move. And now these boys powering up the New Zealand coast. Kayard so determined. Look at that head hunched into the shoulder. Crew there freezing cold. They'd have had no sleep last night. They'll be focused on the finish. So we're back at the front now on Merit Cup. Merit of tack. Toshiba are behind. Toshiba's closing in. Wind's building. It's forecast to build even more. We're recording speeds of 40 knots plus. Now, that's not going to suit Merit. Toshiba, I definitely think they've caught up now. Gap between them, I'd say less than 5 minutes. We're looking down on Toshiba now, powering up wind. Can't see where the crew all out the rack, I'm sure. Yes, they are. They really are the pursuer. Great shot, these spectator boats coming out. Few a bit more timid up behind North Head. It's really bumpy out there. These shots don't give you quite the impression how rough it is, but a beautiful shot. Merit in the foreground. Toshiba further back. Crowds lining North Head there. Always the best finish of the race, no exception this time. In this country, people are following it on radio, on telly, they're on the beaches. Everyone's interested, and so many desperate for Dalton to come past that finishing line in first position. About half an hour now to the finish. Wind building. Ragitoto there, that's the island on the far side. As Dalton is approaching his hometown, the spectator boats are following in. And Dennis Connor is too, except Dennis Connor, still the heat is on Dalton. It's blowing hard. We've just recorded 46 knots. So big wind, anything could happen, and Connor knows that. Dalton knows that. They won't be relaxed until they cross the finish. So, Merit Cup Grant Dalton, they've got to sail for, I would say, another 8-9 minutes. They've got a tack, should lay the line then it's finished. The crowd are going to go berserk. More spectator boats are going to come out, but where is Toshiba and Dennis Connor? Should be coming into shot any minute now, or has Grant Dalton and Merit pulled up? Well, at the moment, that's looking good for Dalton. Dalton has definitely consolidated that now, as the Armada are out to meet him. The crew on the racks, no sleep last night. Adrenaline will be pumping now. This is the moment they've dreamt for. This could put Merit Cup into second position. Remember, he's really struggled on this race. Never dreamt he'd do so well on the short leg coming into Auckland. Did it last time, but perhaps this time on Merit Cup, a victory here could be even more significant and put Merit Cup, one of the real favourites, back in real contention. Spectacular shots these, aren't they? Again, helicopter looking down. Those sails, you can see those people who sail just pointing it tight into the wind, letting some of the power out of the sail. That's how windy it is out here today. As they come round North Head, the wind funneling down the river. You can see that. Look at those gusts powering over. The one thing that will be preoccupying Grant Dalton is this boat has got to hang on. Very bumpy, big wind, spectator boats about. In theory, he's got this one in the bag, but he won't be thinking that. I think I can see Kevin Shoebridge steering. I can see Grant Dalton on the rail. As we pull back and look, that's the vista. Bees round the honeypot. Connor behind. For the crowd now, just minutes to celebrate a Dalton victory, they hope. Dalton now tacking. One tack should get him to the line. The boat heads into the wind. You can see the breeze pick up, the boat heel over. Spectator boats, there's police boats out there. They're all very, very close. They're heading for the line now. Spectacular moment this for Grant Dalton. 10 Kiwis on this boat. Remember, the boat's sailing for Monaco. You won't find more New Zealanders on any other boat. Adopted by most of New Zealand as their boat. Coming up to the finish line now. This is it for Grant Dalton. Spectator boat homing in now. That's the finish. Grant Dalton, Merit Cup. They've done it. They've held on all day through winds of 45 knots. They were against it. They didn't think they'd have the boat speed in this sort of weather, but they've done it. For Grant Dalton, that victory has put him and Merit Cup right back in the frame. And the man just behind Toshiba, just 2 or 3 minutes behind. Any mistake from Dalton, well, Toshiba would have pounced on it, but Dalton wouldn't let them. So on board, there's a problem. Look at that. Merit Cup's mainsail has shredded. Now, if that had happened just 5 minutes ago, it would have been curtains for Dalton. Connor would have sailed past. Perhaps Chessie would too. Someone's looking down on Merit Cup. What a spectacular finish. 2 minutes, 2:36 is what I've just heard was Toshiba behind. Toshiba second. And Chessie coming up in third. Well, we had a spectacular finish in Sydney, but few Whitbread finishes ever could have been more dramatic than that. And Dalton, well, look, coming into the harbour now. This is what these guys will have been thinking about in the last few hours sitting on that rail. Let's just soak up the atmosphere as Grant Dalton and Merit Cup gets a traditional Auckland welcome. Great moments these for Grant Dalton. Last time he came into Auckland first on New Zealand Endeavour. It was the middle of the night then, about 3:30. Different this time, different scenario, and perhaps even more significant. Remember, Merit Cup really needed a podium position to pull them back in the frame. Well, that's where they are now. Second place overall. Emotional moment too for Grant Dalton. Hometown, family here to greet him, lots of friends on the dockside. That's it, that's victory, that's the celebration. And that's the boat coming in second. The big man of yachting, Dennis Connor, beaten into Auckland by Grant Dalton. And now let's move down to the dockside to speak to the local hero himself.
Oh, the water was smooth. This boat's very quick upwind and smooth water, and I guess that's you know, the way we've set it up and sailing in these waters all the time. We made a couple of good tactical choices, and but the boat's very quick upwind and light to moderate smooth water. It's just a shame the whole round the world race isn't light to moderate smooth water.
Whilst Grant Dalton got stuck into the victory champagne, the nemesis of New Zealand sailing was reacquainting himself with his many fans.
Last 40-50 miles there was no passing lane and he was sailing well. He was had good boat speed. There was really no opportunities for us to get by. We just tried to keep the pressure on him and hope that he might make a mistake, but he did a good job. I congratulate Grant and the crew of Merit.
For the second leg running, George Collins and Chessie Racing claimed third place, but race leader Paul Kayard and EF Language had to settle for fourth spot.
How you doing? Welcome to Auckland. Home of the America's Cup.
Swedish Match got the sympathy vote as they finally finished in fifth position.
Yesterday, the Swedish Match guys were unfortunate, and the rest of us were real lucky. And I guess we thought we'd have a chance at nibbling at somebody last night, but You know, they certainly left the door. They left no cracks in the door. They sailed a good leg. Basically, the shore was favored the whole time.
From the affable Swedish match skipper Gunnar Krantz, there were no excuses and no recriminations following his team's bad luck.
It just died, like somebody shut down the power, and it died. The whole thing died, and we saw the others coming one by one, and we just couldn't move.
For Laurie Smith and the Silk Cut boat, leg 4 was a case of the same old story. Up with the leaders at the start, they showed great boat speed to head the fleet in the early stages, only to come unstuck once again due to poor navigational decisions, which have proved to be their Achilles heel in the race so far. By the time they limped into Auckland, some 3 hours behind leg winner Merit Cup, they were nursing a shredded mainsail and the battered egos of a pre-race favourite, which has so far failed to deliver. The dockside welcome might have eased the disappointment of a 6th place finish, but the time has come for skipper Laurie Smith to look long and hard at what's gone wrong with his campaign and do whatever he can to turn things around. Although many observers believe it's already too late for Silk Cut to get back in contention for the major honours. But for the British boys at the dock, it was time to address their problems.
We don't have a problem with the speed. It's we've either been unlucky or stupid with which way we go. And you know, a bit of luck and being a bit more aggressive maybe which way we go is going to hopefully do the trick. But certainly in a breeze up to now downwind we've been very fast, yeah. And that's down to the crew, not the boat.
Whilst boat speed might not be a problem, navigation certainly is. And navigator Steve Hales feels the pressure's really on him.
There's no doubt we got the boat speed, and you know, generally we haven't been making good decisions, and you know, I put my hand up on a lot of that. Laurie and I haven't really got our stuff together in many respects early on in the race, you know, first 2 legs, and we need to address that. We need to get that sorted out. So I'm thinking long and hard about what my role may be in the future or may not be. But generally, I mean, it's not down to these guys, as I say, you know, and the boat's certainly quick.
For the Norwegian boat Innovation Caverna, 7th position was their worst finish so far. A damaged mast had cost them dearly on leg 3, but this time Knut Frostad's men were let down by some poor navigational decisions. Proof that the fleet's hottest navigator, Marcel van Triest, is human after all.
We made a mistake, you know. We're not slow, we're not sailing badly. Normally we are navigation-wise we're pretty good, and I think we're going to be for the rest of the race. No drama on our boats, really. We made 2 mistakes, which is 2 decisions you make, and those decisions take when we won our reach, and that screws up a whole leg. And you can't after that say that, you know, we are really bad and have to change everything.
So down to 4th position overall, but spirits on board remain high.
It was actually the first leg that we didn't have sort of master plan from we want to go there, we want to go there. We were sure that it was sort of all pretty fickle and difficult to predict, so sort of let's stay with the fleet and sort of take the shifts as they come, and that didn't work out.
As ever, there was plenty of Norwegian support on hand to welcome Caverna in, and no one in Auckland is in any doubt that they will rise again. 2 hours later, it was the Dutch boat Brunel's Synergy which came in to claim 8th position, forcing the girls on EF Education into last place for the 2nd consecutive leg. The Dutch boat now trails the leaders by a country mile and are surely out of the running for the major honours, despite some improvement in performance under their new skipper, Roy Heine.
A little bit disappointed. I thought there was more possibility in it. We put the boat on the right side of the race course. In the last stages, the weather was really complicated and we didn't see the complete picture. So I think we left a bit lying in the end. We should have gone with EF. Instead, we split with them and went with the guys we were actually racing against. And I think in the end, it cost us 2 places.
Whilst Roy Heine was getting a champagne soaking, the girls on EF Education were still racing, and night had fallen by the time they approached the Auckland finish. The girls might have lost out to Brunel's Synergy in leg 3 and 4, but they retain a 4-point lead over the Dutch boat in the overall race standings. And if anything, the welcome for the girls was bigger and better than for many other boats. For Leah Newbold and her fellow Kiwis, It was a great moment. Pleased to be back home for the first time in months. Traditional Maori dancers led the dockside welcome, with the girls doing their best to hide the disappointment of another last-place finish.
We were coming back with more wind and less upwind, so it means that we were going straight on our course each time, except at the end, so we had to do less distance.
We've had a few things break on the boat, and I mean, we've literally been praying the damn thing and hold together today because there's so many things that are broken.
So once again the whole Whitbread fleet completes a leg on the same day. After 1,200 nautical miles, a little over 8 hours between first and last positions. With all the boats in, it's time to start the party. So after 4 legs, the points table shows EF Language still in top spot with a 39-point lead over Merit Cup, who leap into second place following their leg 4 victory. 20 points further back, a Swedish match, who slipped to third with the Caverna down to 4th spot and Toshiba consolidating a 5th place. Only 5 points behind Toshiba are Chessie Racing in 6th, but Laurie Smith and Silk Cup now languish in 7th. 4 points now separate EF Education and Brunel's Synergy in 8th and 9th, with these two boats locked in their own battle to avoid the wooden spoon.
So 4 of the 9 legs gone, but the toughest, the next leg around Cape Horn, is still to come. Join us again as the Whitbread fleet sets sail for São Sebastião, leg 5 in the Whitbread Round the World race for the Volvo Trophy.